Okay, looks like it's time to get started here. Well, first, thank you everyone for your time today. Patrick and I truly appreciate it. What we're going to be talking about in this session is service management and monitoring, especially as where it meets the hybrid cloud world and all the pieces that all of us put together to make a part of it. I'm Vic Nyman with Blue Stripe, and with me is Patrick.
Yeah, thanks all for coming. I'm Patrick Sundquist, CTO of GridPro, and I'm very glad and pleased to be here today and be able to present what we have to show. So with that said, I think, take it away, Vic.
Mm-hmm. There we go. So hopefully everybody in the room is either coming from a service provider background, enterprise, but all of us are the teams that basically help host and manage business applications. And we have customers, whether they are our tenants or whether they are part of our enterprises and their business units, but all of us have to bring these pieces together. And in our IT organizations, we've got lots of people. We've got great specialists that can take care of any of the individual components that are a part of it. And as a part of that, we're building these systems with great technologies. These technologies are systems, storage, third-party components as well. And in fact, at this show, you're hearing some pretty exciting new announcements over more of those. Personally, for me, the Azure Stack directions are really cool. It's going to open up a lot of new flexibility in how we build applications. But as a group, we're responsible not for the components. These are the tools we use. What we're responsible for is our own business lines and our own tenants and customers who really want to know how that all comes together and works. And this session is about how we as organizations both bring our people to this picture as well as break through some of the visibility gaps so that we're really managing applications, their availability, and when something goes wrong, how do you get the right person involved? How does the team have a language to work commonly across these? And how do we fit it into our workflow and process? Now, this picture is actually a simple one. There's only a few components here and only a few servers. And most of you have much more complicated environments than this. But one of the things that we have found is the complication of the parts. The challenge begins at as small as 5 servers, especially if they're different technologies, and it continues on into the hundreds and thousands of servers. The other key component of this is the management across these systems is not the management of a VM or the management of a network. Those parts and those tools are available, and that's easy. The challenge is when you combine all of these. Not very long ago, we conducted a survey of 150 of your industry peers. In fact, several of you might have participated. And we asked the question, in looking at this picture, what's the toughest part about managing? And so we even asked questions like, is it VMs? Is it the new cloud stuff? And they said, no, you don't understand. We can handle any single technology. That one particular director said, my problem is, in any given application, I've got so many different parts. My challenge is how do I coordinate everybody? The survey asked that question and found that 85% of companies have more than 5 technologies in any one single application. And in fact, it said 64% have 7 or more technologies in any one application. So that's 7 or more groups, outside vendors, and components that can go wrong when that light turns red. So this session now is, from Blue Stripe, we're going to talk about how do you get the visibility, and from the GridPro side, we're going to talk about how do you involve people in the entire process, both from a technical language and a process language as well. So introducing Blue Stripe. Blue Stripe Software is a partner of Microsoft. We've had a great partnership in the System Center arena, and we are now participating actively in the Azure Pack and the future directions of where the platforms are going. Our product, in this case, we're going to be talking about Performance Center, is a discovery, monitoring, and performance platform for Azure Pack, System Center, web clients. It fits in with your process. Today, we're going to be doing most of the demos from Azure Pack, but we'll also give you a glimpse of System Center and some of the standalone views as well. The key thing about what we do is if the discussion in the language is not about components, but it's about applications, the challenge for an operations team, especially in a highly dynamic environment, is at any one moment what makes up a business application. New instances can come on and a connection can drop. The first order challenge is if I'm managing the availability of this app, what makes it up? Blue Stripe solves that problem. We are continuously discovering and tracking what applications are doing. So if you're watching these views and another system comes up, within a few seconds, you're going to see that show up and you're going to see the traffic going through and you're beginning to track the performance. What we'll do here in a few minutes is get into a demo and we'll show you about the applications we discover and some of the data that's available. But before we go there, Patrick's going to be talking a lot about the roles across an organization. Blue Stripe as a product is primarily used directly by somebody you might call operations support. In our demo here, it's going to be the engineer who's having to figure out what goes wrong. And there's several places we participate. So from the upper left, we're detecting, tracking applications, service levels by the app, and even by components across the tiers. We can walk those performance items hop by hop down into individual components to figure out, well, not yet why, but exactly who is the cause of this. Participate in verifying the changes to see is that system back up. Before you mark OK on that change ticket, verify that that app is back up and there's no unexpected behavior happening across them. Then lastly, one key element here is a key part of what Blue Stripe specializes in is to not be limited by the platforms you choose. So as all of you, all of the really exciting things are coming along about cloud and some of the stack evolution. But as that survey pointed out, and several of the directors, they said, rarely does somebody come and just take away all the old stuff. You're still managing this interconnected thing. So you're putting maybe new cloud tiers on the front, but you may still be tying to existing older transactional systems on the back. So this capability that we're talking about can help you track some of the newest platform as a service, tie in vendors you're dependent on in SaaS, all the way up to transactions running in and out of CICS on the mainframe. How do you get one view of the app to be able to be the common language amongst everyone?
Okay, so GridPro's part in this, as Vic said, is going to be how we can interact between end users and service desk and engineers. So the big process around this, someone detects a problem, how do they report the problem, how do they get help, and so on. And for that, we're using the GridPro Request Management for Windows Azure Pack, which is our add-on on top of the Windows Azure Pack stack. It enables you to do ITSM for the hybrid cloud, backed up by System Center Service Manager behind the scenes. So we're basically connecting in there to enable you to do incident management, change management, and service request fulfillment in collaboration with the Windows Azure Pack portal. Also activity management, which you will see today. So in the first demo here, we will be using the incident management and change management parts of this. And then I hope to be able to have time to also show how we can go and add custom offerings on top of what is available inside of Windows Azure Pack out of the box. So with that said, can we, do we have the clicker? Did I get it? I got it, perfect. So let's jump over to the demo. As I said, this is going to be about someone facing a problem. And then they need to get that help. We need to sort it out. So we're going to have an end user that is going to have a performance issue with the online claims application. And this end user can, of course, be many different people. If you're a service provider, that could be your tenant. If this is an in-house service provider, that could be a normal end user even, or a technician, right? So there are many different scenarios where this applies. So let's get going with that. I want to switch over to my laptop. And this is within Windows Azure Pack. I just want to briefly touch on the admin side here. This is request management, and this is where we hook up to Service Manager. You can do some configuration there. Okay, so logged on as this end user that is facing this problem with the online claims processing application, I now need to get help, right? So I'm relying on this application for my daily work, and now I'm facing this problem that it's just taking forever to go through that normal process. So within Windows Azure Pack, I'm now able to make a request for help. So I'm going to click Create New Item here. I'm going to go for Request, Create Request. And in here, we actually see the service catalog coming over from System Center Service Manager. And in here, I find a category called Support. And luckily enough, there's a Performance Issue category in here. So I click that, and there's a form presented to me. So this form has been configured by our authoring people around the service desk, and they have decided that this is the information we need to know to be able to get going and investigating a performance issue. So I'm going to type in a description there. I'm going to indicate a level of impact, which is going to be high. And this is actually preventing me from doing my job, so I want to put that information in there as well. And let's go for end user. Okay, so I get a confirmation page here. I can see the information that was entered, and I submit that. So straight from within Windows Azure Pack, where I can go and provision my VMs or manage my hybrid cloud resources, I can now get help as well with those resources from the service desk. So if we look at this ticket, this is actually now an incident ticket inside of System Center Service Manager. And we can see all the information that was entered into the form. And we can also see that immediately there is an activity in place here. So that activity is assigned to an engineer that is going to go and investigate this performance issue. So this person is a subject matter expert, or engineer Vic, actually, who is
you get what you get.
who's going to go and do this soon. But first of all, I want to show you the view of that engineer inside of the tenant portal, because the tenant portal could also be used for that engineer to see what has been assigned to him. So if there's an activity assigned to you, that could be a review activity where you go and improve something, or a manual activity where you're actually going to go and do a manual work, which is, in this case, go and do that investigation. So in here I have that activity with some work instructions. I can access the parent work item, so I can see the information filled in by that end user having that problem. And with that, let's have that engineer go and do his work.
Okay, so I'm the engineer, and a little bit of background. When these issues are simple, usually the first level of support kicks in, and it's a simple fix, it's a restart something. Where we really come into this is when it's not very clear. In this case, what we're saying is users are slow. It's not really specific, and there's this big hosted application that we have, and so we've got some challenges here. So my job is to pick up and figure out what's wrong. Now, what's important here to figure out where it fits in your organizations or your customers, the role of solving this problem might be something your tenants want to do. And so what we're about to see, your tenants can do this themselves, to go through and look. As a service provider, the role may come back to you, where you're having to sort through and figure out why your tenants' applications are slow. And then that applies in an enterprise situation where, whether it's central IT that's figuring out, or you want to enable your business units, same issue. The core thing, and you'll see at different places that can show up, but what we're going to do is I'm going to act like a tenant at this point, where I have control of systems, my service provider has gone in through Azure Pack and made this Performance Center feature available to me. So what we're going to do is come into the tenant view of things. When you set this up, your tenants or your customers can see Performance Center as a new option that's capable. You can have it set up to see one or multiple domains across different groups, or focus it just on one tenant. We're going to look in this group, and this group is I'm part of the InsureCo. I'm part of the group that supports the online claims processing app, and I have the ability to be constantly tracking those applications. In this case, I'm looking at a dashboard that I've got set up for the applications that we support, and I can see the service levels that are happening with those applications. I can see, yep, people are starting to complain. I'm seeing really nasty response time spikes, and in particular, I'm seeing issues that are crossing the different application sets. In fact, these poor users, doesn't that look suspiciously like a 60-second timeout amongst users? But what we're going for here is the online claims processing. So first I've figured out it's not one user, this is systemic that's happening. It also appears to be intermittent. And I'm looking at the tiers. These are service level by tiers to figure out, well, can I tell quickly where it is? And yeah, there's a strong suspicion here that this guy is coming out of the application tier. But here's where it gets good. Here's where we go in and we figure out, here's where we figure out what is currently making up that online claims processing app. What you're seeing on the screen is a hybrid cloud application. Over on the left, Azure Platform as a Service. There's mixtures of other cloud VMs, on-premise systems, Linux, Solaris. It puts it all in one view. So whether you're sitting and looking at an Azure Pack Tenant view, or you've seen a minute through System Center, or our core product Fact Finder, you get to see the same view, even for the parts that extend elsewhere. You'll also see third parties. Over on the right, if you have an external partner you're dependent on for, let's say, a software as a service connection or just some kind of transactional connection, that will show up in your dashboards as well. So that I can quickly go in and figure out, for these users, the performance that's here. And in fact, yeah, we're seeing response time alerts. I may see multiple backed up here. We can then explore. Even though there's a big red icon over here, let's act like we don't see it. So we can go in, and whether it's on a cloud platform or on premise, you can open that up and see the individual components that are doing it. You can click and see the individual performance. In fact, in this particular case, we're looking at an Azure PaaS node, and we can see that system's performance, configuration that we know about it. A lot of this data is available in different places, but the objective here is to bring it together in one place so that the person who's trying to solve this fast, by the way, one of our enterprise customers, their target is 90 seconds to go from something's an issue to identifying exactly what needs to be fixed. So they can come through and follow the response times by node, and basically we're going to get down to this failing Java node that's over here, and we get down to the Apache front end on it, see its particular performance, any issues that it's happening, down to WebSphere. In fact, let's look at that box here. We're seeing that that box has some pretty suspicious alerts that are going on. Not only is that box giving slow performance, resource issues are occurring. And if we go back, sure enough, we're seeing something happening on the box that looks pretty nasty. And if I look at each individual component, they're not the ones causing it. So I've successfully followed the response time problem to the node. I've looked, it's not the application problem, so we're not going to be calling the developers as a part of this. This seems to be something else. Well, let's look at what else that system's doing, not just what it's doing for this application. And if I go over to the server map, the prior view was that node and only what it was doing for the online claims processing application. This view is, show me everything that's happening to that box. What is it doing? And this you can do with a cloud node, an on-premise node, and I can expand that guy and see everything in my demo system that's happening. And remember, we looked at the core apps that didn't seem to have a problem, but the real culprit is, who is that? We could go through these, but I've got an alert going here that says, I've got a backup job that shouldn't be running at this point, and it is absolutely consuming this box. So our objective here is to go from a slow application, enable one person without bringing in 20 people to follow it across and get it down to an element that's not contributing correctly, and maybe some information as to what's behind it. This one ended up on a backup job. You can do the same thing and find a network issue in between these connections. You can find a VM that's under-provisioned. You can find a security system that is actually going slow with its authorizations. And one of our favorites is DNS. Everybody know what happens when you have faulty DNS configuration? You get automatic 5-second timeout penalties on transactions. Those are tough to find when a team is first looking at application code as a part of it. So my job as an engineer is to have taken that ticket that says something slow and find something actionable for someone. So what we've found here is a backup job running. It's cycling every 5 minutes and just creating havoc here. So we're going to now go back to the process. Let's assume we're a larger organization. We have to communicate to others. So we're going to bring in the service management process as a part of this.
Okay, so the problem was identified, and therefore we're going to mark that as completed. Let me just bring up my little helper there so you don't have to see me type. That can be a pain. Okay, so that's marked as completed, and I'm logged on as this engineer in the portal here. And now to fix this issue and to be able to keep track of that something has been changed on that system, we want to actually go and register a change request. So I'm going to go down to New Request, Create Request, and this is affecting our business, right? People aren't able to work according as they are supposed to. So let's go for an emergency change here. And again, this form has been tailored for this specific purpose by our service desk. So let's go for a description there. And let's go for a reason why we are doing this. So the reason is that people aren't able to work as they are supposed to. Impact, well, it's a simple thing. We're going to go for minor. We're going to go for low risk. And we're going to point out what we need to, what is the affected application in this case. So let's go and search our CMDB for claims, because that is what we figured out. And add that as an affected item. And let's submit that. And we now have a change request in Service Manager, which is going to enable us to track this specific change. We're going to get the right approvals for doing this change, and we're going to assign a new activity to our engineer and go out and actually do this if it gets approved. Now, since this was a low risk, low impact change, we're going to actually go and automatically approve this. So we've configured the backend ITSM system to actually take those values and then decide to, let's go and approve this. So if we go and click refresh here, I think we'll have Service Manager actually already gone and approved that. And the next thing that will happen is that Service Manager is going to look at what's the next activity in this predefined process. Well, go and assign that ticket to a suitable engineer. So if we click refresh again, we should have that activity in progress, and that is the implement change. So if we go back now to activities, in this case, I'm the one submitting the request for the change. It's been reviewed, approved, predefined. Now I'm actually responsible to go back and do that change. Or our engineer, Vic, will do that. So on activities, we have that new activity. Go and implement the change.
All right. So I'm now that person that gets assigned to this. And so my job is to read through the ticket, understand what needs to be changed, and go in and affect the change. One of the things that I didn't mention a moment ago was that one of the key challenges in this is so if I'm this engineer, one of the key challenges is to convince me that I'm the problem with that application. A number of our customers talk about when we know what it is, it's generally easy to fix. What's hard is to go from something that's difficult to fix to convincing the owner of it exactly what it is and moving on. In this case, we've been able to identify it's the backup job. I have control over that system, and I'm actually able to go in I'm basically puttied into the box here, and I'm going to shut down that backup job as a part of it. Now, it may take a few minutes for this thing to show up, but what's going to happen is that backup job is going to shut down. I'm going to be using this then to verify what's been happening with the application. In fact, here, let's go back in. We're going to choose that application. And what I'm going to be able to do is over the next moment or two be able to check that these big spikes go away. Or better than that, I'm going to be able to watch this box and tell when that backup job gets shut down. We're going to show that it was there, show that it had caused issues, but now that it's gone away. So I can verify what's happening. More importantly, I can verify the impact back on the front. One other thing to bring out at this point. Not long ago, we were working with a Fortune 100 company. You guys know the names of these kind of companies. And we were doing this in front of the corporate head of IT operations and all of his staff as a part of it. And during the conversation, he stood up and pointed at the screen and said, "That's what I want." And he didn't mean Blue Stripe. What he wanted was a common view across his organization in a language that everybody participates in. And one other executive told us, they said, "Blue Stripe, you don't have to solve the problem for me. All you've got to do is be able to get it to the guy who owns it and convince him that it's his, because we know how to take it from there." So that's one key role that we generally participate in here. So at this point, I've remediated the problem here. In fact, let's see if we can take a look at it. In fact, yep, CPU's dropping off. This guy's going to drop off. We're going to see, yep, in fact, I don't know if you can see it on there, but that backup job is actually stopped and he's no longer reporting. And he'll be here for as long as the width of the window, and he'll age out. But I'll have a historical record of that, and I can go back next week and talk to the guy who schedules that backup job and have a discussion of how did that happen. And let me show you exactly what happened and when. So at this point, we're all set, and we're going to turn back to the process and say we fixed the problem.
Okay, so when that is done, we need to report back that this has actually been completed. So let's just go and complete that activity real quick here. Put in the information so we can track that later on in the system. And you will see that manual activity become completed. Then, based on the process definition, we actually have a post-implementation review that is going to be processed afterwards. But making this integration with our ITSM system enable us to go back to that specific system and then see what was the cause of a change, who did the change, when was it done, and so on. So we can actually have as good of a tracking for our hybrid cloud resources as we're used to have for our data center resources. Okay, so this also means that when this has been implemented, yeah, there we go. This also means that the end user who actually reported this from the beginning would be able to track that progress of the ticket as it goes. They can even see that the investigation was completed. And this will, of course, be resolved now that we have resolved the issue. Now, if there had been something that has popped up for that end user, some more information that could be valuable for the people that are fixing this issue, they can even go and interact with the service desk on the tracking tab here. They can go and upload error messages or add comments and so on. So that basically concludes the first demo. And with that said, I'm going to allow Vic here to summarize this and talk a bit about Blue Stripe, and then we'll go back to request management for Windows Azure Pack and show how we can add custom offerings to the Windows Azure Pack portal. Take it away.
Mm-hmm. All right, so far what we've done is to talk about the basics. And everyone here knows about the service management process. Everyone knows here about the basics of running through it. What we were attempting to cover here was applying, how do you apply that in the new world? How do you have the technology views that span any platform you're running? And how do you have workflows that fit in with whatever platforms you're running on? We just did all of this through Azure Pack, looking at systems that were on Azure Pack and some that weren't. From a Blue Stripe point of view, you can actually do this from several places in your workflow. We've mostly been doing the left one, where we are a feature that is added to Azure Pack. Resource provider is the thing that delivers. The Azure Pack administrator can put that as a part of plans and offerings to the tenants, and so those tenants can have that in their workflow. The middle one is doing this hosted and run from public cloud. You can run our Blue Stripe product from the cloud and be managing systems that span across on into the data center. The one on the far right is if you want to do this on-premise, don't have quite the resources out on the left that you want yet, you can do this on-premise as a part of System Center, integrated directly. The key idea is for that picture up above, any of the three can be used and they can be used at the same time. So that, for example, we've just done this whole demo looking at Azure Pack and the hosted systems that were a part of it. In fact, so we talked about the ability to manage different domains, monitoring dashboards that are part of it, and in particular what I wanted to get to here, and the live view of an application. And this is as tenants see it or your internal customers as a part, customers of Central IT. How many here use System Center? Okay. You can have that same view and same workflow integration inside a System Center. So the core operations manager is familiar to a lot of folks. When you have Blue Stripe plugged in, you've got a new set of options over here on the left. You've got dashboards that'll talk about the high-level performance. You've got the same live application views, distributed components. And just like we were integrated into Azure Pack and its workflow, the workflow is integrated here. For example, we're looking at Azure systems, and if any of these components has an operations manager management pack, or if System Center knows about it, the workflows over here will show up. So you can go through and you can explore the same kinds of issues and have all of the tools of Operations Manager in context of those application systems. For those of you who may not have Operations Manager, our core product, Fact Finder, gives you the same views. In fact, they'll even go further. So you can view those same applications. You can drill down, for example, into these nodes, down into individual transactions and figure out where problems are going. This is the expert view here. So what you're seeing out of all of this is Blue Stripe's contribution is to continuously track, map, follow the performance of these applications. The second thing we do is how many places can we put this? Into Azure Pack, into System Center, our own console, into an HTML5 console. In fact, do you guys know the squared up dashboard guys that are on System Center? Yeah. You can actually take let me back up here. So imagine building your own dashboards. Imagine, another key thing is many of you, I'm sure, are building your own dashboard systems, where for your top applications, key components that map to you, and so you may be using something like Squared Up, you may be building your own. You can actually hang those maps inside of your views. So imagine your dashboard system, and you can put your top order applications and their maps inside of it. The other key thing is you can do that without the ability to drill down into details, so you don't let your executives drill into the pieces underneath. The other key thing, and we won't go into a lot of depth here, is everything we've talked about is discovery and monitoring and triage of an application. But once you know the shape of an application, it's in there as the defined distributed application model that's behind this. Well, guess what happens to Service Manager? Service Manager now has automatically defined business services, so you don't have to manually populate the CMDB, which means when you, inside of the service management process, when you want to create a ticket and assign it to Patrick, you don't have to populate what it is. Patrick's ticket is going to be able to tell him exactly which systems are involved and who owns those systems. So the knowledge of what systems are a part of what business app is kind of like a Rosetta Stone key to kind of bridge across between the infrastructure and the business process wrapped around it. So with that, I'm going to turn back to Patrick here. But the key takeaway, especially around Blue Stripe, is that what we do is discover and track these apps regardless of what platform they're running, bring it together in one view, and then how do we put it in as many workflows and as many data areas like CMDBs as we can. Patrick.
Okay, perfect. So let's go back to the slide here.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, so you've seen how request management for Windows Azure Pack can get your ITSM processes into play, into the hybrid cloud story inside of the Windows Azure Pack stack. Now, what I wanted to show you guys is that when there's something that you need to surface on top of the Windows Azure Pack portal for your tenants or for your organization, there is an option to do so through the service catalog of Service Manager and Request Management for Windows Azure Pack. So this means that you're now able to offer services that are not available out of the box in Windows Azure Pack, right? If you want to provide a different experience for requesting VMs, for instance, you want to have more business-aligned questions when you're doing so, you can go and build your custom offering in the service catalog of Service Manager, define the questions that you think are suitable to figure out what should be provisioned in the back end. I'm going to show you this. But I also want to mention that you're able to include approval steps in these processes. If you go through the ITSM process of a request fulfillment part inside of Service Manager, you define what you want to do within the request fulfillment process. Hello? There we go. Is there going to be a review step to begin with? Someone needs to take a look at this request because there might be a high impact on cost in the end for someone. Then probably that person want to know about that before this is actually gone and provisioned. So let's take a look at what that could be like. And we're going to actually see the service catalog of Service Manager, but also some advanced capabilities that we add on top of that product, which gives us the possibility to use PowerShell to go and extend this process. So fetching information into the forms inside of Windows Azure Pack that are selectable, and also using PowerShell to go and validate the selections or the input that someone is typing into these forms. And again, if you want to do it, you can enable approval workflows. So let's switch back to my laptop, and I've actually switched environment completely now. So let's start inside of Service Manager. So for those of you who are not familiar with Service Manager, this is actually the Service Manager console. We're going to be looking at the request for a virtual machine. And this is an alternative process to what you get inside of Windows Azure Pack out of the box, which is a very technical experience, right? So in here we have an offering with a title, an icon, a small description, and we have some user prompts, questions that we want to be asking to the person requesting this VM. Now this is the same concept that we used before in the previous demo to render those forms for reporting an incident and requesting a change, but we're now using it for the request fulfillment process instead. So this is an offering that is pointing to a template for a service request, and we have these questions like, what is the purpose of this? What cloud do you want to put this in? I mean, you have some additional capabilities here because we have Service Manager firing off SMA runbooks in the back end. So you define what you want to be happening when we do the fulfillment part of this. So You also get to pick how you want to expose these on the form. Should it be lists, text boxes, and so on? And you're able to do some client-side validation. Now, what we've added is the possibility, on top of the Microsoft capabilities of Service Manager, we've added the possibility to visualize cost in the form. So if you want a user to see that there's a base cost for this offering, and depending on the choices they make in the form, this can actually aggregate additional costs that will be visualized for them when they go through this process. So you could enable cost visualization. You could inject a legal acceptance text, which means that they need to agree to something before we actually go and provision this resource for them. And we can do some UX configuration, divide questions on different pages in the wizard that you saw previously. And here's the really awesome stuff, if you ask me. If I want to expose a set of purposes for the user, I could be getting those through PowerShell or hard coding these into the form experience. Now, once a purpose has been selected, which you're going to see soon, we are actually going to fire off a PowerShell script that is going to decide which cloud is this resource allowed to be put into. So based on the purpose of the request, we're going to show a subset or a complete list of different clouds. Same thing for OSS. If it's going to be a production system or development system, there will be different options for the user requesting this. We're going to fetch a description using PowerShell. And then when we get to the name of the VM, we're actually going to use remote validation to validate the name of that machine. But we're also going to use PowerShell to generate a name. So we can combine these remote source and remote validation parts, which are extensibility options for you to use if you want to do things like this. I want to take the answers of some previous questions, combine those into a name of a VM, and then use additional PowerShell capabilities to go and validate that against your own environment. Is this name already occupied, or is it available? And so on. So you have some great capabilities added on top of this. So let's take a look at what that could look like. So let's switch back over to the portal here and go for new request, create request. And let's go for IS and request virtual machine. Now all of this information is coming from the service catalog and service manager. So this is up to you how you configure this. When we get into the form here, we see that we actually go and pull some subscription information using PowerShell to get that into the process, and we give the user the option of picking a purpose for this VM. Should it be for development? Well, in that case, you can put it in Azure or your private cloud. If it's for production, if we're not mature enough to have productional machines in Azure, well, private only. So you can give a cascading experience here between these questions. Same things for OSS. If it's for production, I get to select between these. If it's for development, let's go for Azure, operating system. Then there's some additional options for you. Once you select that, we get a description for the user so they can see, is this a suitable OS for this specific purpose? We click Next. We have some predefined rules deciding what network to put this machine on. We generate a name, and if we were to go and change this, we would use PowerShell again to go and do that new validation. So this could be suitable for a number of different purposes. Actually, I'm going to take the opportunity to point you to another session that is going tomorrow, which is called Getting the Most Out of Your System Center Service Manager, where we're going to dig deeply into these capabilities. And we're actually going to be provisioning against Azure Resource Manager, which is something that you've seen now coming also for the on-prem in the Azure stack. So really cool stuff there. Okay, now I get to the confirmation page. I can see the full content of my request. I submit that. And there's a service request created. And this service request contains 2 steps, a review activity and a runbook activity. Now, this runbook activity will, of course, not be fired off before the review has been completed. But when it fires off, it will get all the data of the request into a SMA runbook that you are able to go and tailor the way you want to do. And then it will go and create this VM for me, but now using this different user experience inside of the Windows Azure Pack portal, allowing us to have an approval step, and so on. So if we refresh this, I think we're going to see a approved review or in progress. So this will be approved any second now, and then it will actually go and fire off that runbook and do what we've requested. Now, if we go and request provisioning of resources in clouds that are not natively managed by Windows Azure Pack, like in this case, we went and actually requested a machine to be provisioned in Azure. How can we allow users to manage these resources inside of Windows Azure Pack? Well, we've recently added a view for you to allow users to actually look into your CMDB of Service Manager. So resources that they are responsible of can be exposed in here, and you can even go and create custom actions for these. And you do that on the admin portal of Windows Azure Pack, where you're able to point out either a SMA runbook or point it into the service catalog. If there's an action that requires an approval, you probably want to take it that way. Let me just show you briefly while we're waiting for that request to be completed, what that could look like. So I'm going to click one of these machines. And you see that there's a visualization of this object, bit empty, but anyway. You decide what you want to show on these pages, and you decide what kind of actions you want to expose down here. So if you've done a backup action, we actually give you the possibility to fire off runbooks that could be used for any purpose. From the tenant portal, they can track the progress of that runbook, and they can even view the output of that job. So you decide what you want to show down here, and you have the power of service management automation. So this gives you some tremendous capabilities to do life cycle management of resources that are not natively managed by Windows Azure Pack. And I think by now, our request here should probably be approved and completed even. Okay, so that machine would be available to be managed soon enough. Within, this is the last part of the demo. That's just how it is. So it's going to pop up soon enough when it's synced into the CMDB of Service Manager. We're going to be able to manage that directly from the tenant portal. Come and see that session tomorrow, and I'll show you a lot more stuff around this. So that is how you enable adding custom offerings on top of the Windows Azure Pack portal.
And I realized I've got one more before we move on a little bit here. So we've talked about monitoring, we've talked about the process, but remember at the beginning we said this is about these interconnected application systems, hybrid and so on. Now, the path to hybrid is not trivial, right? How many in the room have got to the hybrid level you guys are wanting to get to? Yeah, I would have been surprised if a hand went up. One of the challenges is that you've got a working business application system going right now, And you've got these attractive platforms and attractive capabilities that are even being announced this week. And the thing is, well, how do you get there? So one of the things is we've been focused on management during the entire discussion. But I wanted to point out one more use of the product. We talked about monitoring, we talked about the process and triage. The other one is migration. So in the discussion of how do you take a business critical system and move it on to cloud? Well, one of the ways that our customers will use Blue Stripe is to help plan the movement of that thing. So there are several global system integrators that use us. Microsoft Consulting uses us. And what they'll do is they'll come in and use the Blue Stripe product to discover the application systems and all of the unexpected dependencies that are a part of it. So that if you go to move something, you're not accidentally breaking. Or, better than that, you can look at this and characterize the performance and resources of each of the component inside that business application. So it makes it for a really good planning exercise leading up to what can be pushed to the cloud and what really should stay on premise as a part of it. And lastly, we have the ability to compare, so you can look at the before and after, so that before your team lets go of that application as it's moved over, they've got a really clear comparison. All the things are connected, all the ranges of performance are matching before they let go of that thing. And when they do let go, you're monitoring it as it goes. And you can actually compare and prove to the executive team that something is working better, or it maybe uses fewer resources as a part of the new. So the key idea I'll leave you with here is everything we use to discover and track applications for monitoring is a key element in helping you migrate across from the discovery to the planning of the conversion and the verification afterwards. Right?
Yep. Okay, so I think we have a little time left here before we turn over to Q&A. But I really would like for you to come by our booth here and see more of what GridPro has to offer on top of Windows Azure Pack and on top of System Center Service Manager. Also, we have a part of our product portfolio that is targeting that product. And as Vic said, I want to just point out why people are coming to us for request management for Windows Azure Pack. And that there are some main purposes. One, it's that missing offering on top of Windows Azure Pack, or multiple, of course. The want of providing a more business-friendly user experience inside of the Windows Azure Pack portal when you go and request the resource, like I just showed you. Adding approval to the processes within Windows Azure Pack, and being able to manage those cloud resources no matter where they are through your CMDB in this case. If you have resources in Azure, AWS, or wherever, you're able to do management of those resources. So you can tailor Windows Azure Pack to do pretty much whatever you want to with these capabilities. A very common example is also if you are a service provider and you rely heavily on quota and so on. If you want to do request management around quota, you can now have someone request additional quota to be able to create additional resources within Windows Azure Pack, and you can have someone review that, approve it, and then automatically add quota to that user subscription. Very common scenario. Okay, so reach out to us over at our booth 323, or visit our webpage, and there's some instructions how to move forward from there. We have free evaluation versions of request management for Windows Azure Pack actually baked into the installation of Windows Azure Pack. So as you go and install that, you will actually see our software pop up by default if you haven't deselected it during the installation. But as I said, we have free eval versions for all of our product portfolio there, so reach out and we'll provide that to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick. And on the point of Blue Stripe, we've only covered a bit about it, but the key thing that we're after is how do we cross that gap between what is the business app and the service that all of our mutual customers want and the control that we've got of what things, whether that shows in monitoring or migration, as we talked about, and there's many other use cases. Blue Stripe's here to help, and the key thing that you can expect us to do is expect us to keep partnering closely with Microsoft and the platforms, and where you see some of those directions are going. Blue Stripe being a part of the System Center Alliance, we're definitely going to be there. The other part that you can count on is making sure the broad view of platforms being managed. From Azure to AWS to mainframes on the back end, our job is going to be to help put that into your process, no matter what platform you're managing from. We're out on the trade show floor. Love to talk with you guys if you haven't already seen us. At the website, you can actually get to us for either Azure Pack, System Center add-ons, or the core Fact Finder product as well. I think we got some time for some Q&A afterwards. Any questions from anybody? Yes.
I think it's a question. I don't know. If you have a service provider engineer working on an incident request, and you would like to monitor the time spent
Yep.
on the customer,
Yep.
do you have anything around that?
Yeah. Okay, so the question was, if this is a service provider scenario, so a service provider is providing capabilities for their tenants, a tenant is reaching back with a support case, they're opening a ticket through the portal, and the service provider is working on this ticket, we are actually tracking the time spent on incidents. So through the capabilities of Windows Azure Pack, we have the usage collector collecting usage for amount of memory, storage, and so on for VMs, as an example. We also provide information through our extension of Windows Azure Pack. We provide information like minutes spent on incidents and what service requests that have been requested through the portal. So you get that information into the usage collector, and that means that there are other partners working with Windows Azure Pack that provides billing solutions and so on. So if you're not adding your own extension to use that data and go and create invoices and so on, you can be looking at one of the other partners that are doing this, like Cloud Cruiser and Cloud Assert. We are actually compliant with their products, so you can get that information and go and generate invoices. So on top of resources used by tenants, like the storage and compute and so on, you can actually go and bill on support as well. Additional questions? Okay, there's one.
I guess with the announcement earlier in the week that Azure Stack is going to be replacing Azure Pack in the future, you guys started working on development for any product for that?
Yeah, so we are one of the partners that are already working on the Azure Stack development.
Yeah, definitely a part of our future as well.
Yeah. Exciting stuff.
All right, with that, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. If Patrick or I can do anything to help you guys, please, more than love to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you all.